Okay, let's begin. Like I said, my name is Tolulope Popoola, and I'm this webinar for you. This webinar is for people who are aspiring authors. So if you're a writer and you really want to write a book that you want to publish, then this is for you. And also, especially if you want to write a novel and you want to do that in the next few months. So if you want to write a novel in 2016, then this webinar is for you. I'm going to be sharing some very good content. So I hope you enjoy, pay attention. Let's start with an introduction. So like I said, my name is Tolulope. I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm a publisher, and I'm a writing coach at Accomplished Press. But I wasn't always on this career path. I wasn't always a writer. I used to be an accountant actually. I used to work in a law firm in the city of London. I graduated from my first degree in accounting and business economics, and then I did a master's degree in finance and investment. So I used to be someone that dealt with figures all through the day, and now I deal with words. So there's a story behind that. So in 2006, I realized I was miserable and I was job. I was doing as an accountant, and I knew I wasn't using my creative talents. So I started thinking about what I could do or what kind of job would I be doing that would make me excited to get up and go to work. And I know many people feel this way. A lot of people don't like their jobs, they don't like what they do, they just do it for the money. And I used to be like that. Now, writing and reading have always been my hobbies, but for a long time it didn't occur to me that I could make a career out of them. So I didn't know anyone who worked that. I didn't know anyone who enjoyed working in creative jobs like writing or publishing. However, in 2006, I discovered blogging and writing short stories. And soon I realized that this was something I loved doing and this was something I could do for the rest of my life. So I started thinking about writing as a profession, and I started doing some research, started asking a lot of questions, started looking for people who were in the writing industry, and started trying to learn from them. So about that time, I took a short writing class and I started writing flash fiction and short stories. I created a popular online fiction series with 7 other writers, which was titled Emma. It was a fun fiction series. We created some characters, we created the storylines, and we used to update the blog where we worked every Friday, and that was very popular. We had a lot of great comments and a lot of good feedback from the readers that used to read it. That lasted about 2 years. After that, I wrote my first novel, which was never published because I thought it wasn't good enough. And then I took some characters out of the series, the online fiction series, and I created a novel out of their story. So it was a love story, and I thought we didn't get to the end of the story in the series. So I wanted to create a whole separate novel about it. Then I tried to get the novel published traditionally, but it wasn't working because mainstream publishers in the UK at the time were telling me that the writing was good, the story was good, but they didn't think it was commercially viable because it was ethnic fiction, whatever that means, and they didn't think it would sell a lot of copies. But I thought I have stories that are real to me. They're stories of people I know, stories of my culture, my background, and I want to tell these stories. And if mainstream publishing won't help me, then I'm going to do it myself. So in 2011, I set up Accomplish Press, which is a publishing and coaching company. And then I published my first novel, which I titled Nothing Comes Close. Since then, I've published two collections of flash fiction stories for myself. Before long, I started publishing other writers as well. What happened was a few friends of mine saw that I published my novel and it was doing well. And then they approached me and said, "Oh, since you have experience of publishing, can you help me with my novel?" So I said, "Okay." And I started publishing for other people. And so that's how I got into publishing. So now I've made the permanent leap from doing figures and spreadsheets and dealing with accounting software in accounting to writing, publishing, and coaching. My passion now is helping aspiring authors and writers just like you to make your writing and publishing dreams come true. So that's about me, and that's why I've created this. Some if you want to start writing a novel. Okay, according to American survey, 81% of people want to write a book. Now, I'm guessing you're one of them. So, have you been struggling for years to write a book? Do you lie awake at night hearing your stories in your head and wishing you had the right knowledge to get you started with your book? Or have you been wishing there was a magic wand that would just take the great ideas in your head and transfer them onto paper for you simply because you don't know how to start or where to start? I've been in that position and I know how it feels when you think I have great ideas. I really wish I could write a book, but you just don't know where to start, who to turn to, and so on. Or maybe you've already started making some attempts to write your book, but you got so frustrated because it was so overwhelming and was so confusing that you just quit. Maybe you started, but you've been struggling with self doubt your work would ever be good enough. Or maybe you've been procrastinating with your idea because you're busy. Maybe you've got a full time job, you've got a family, you've got lots of things you do during the week, enough time in the day for you to commit to writing a novel. I can tell you that it's possible and doable to do, even if you feel you're very busy already. Or maybe you're afraid of criticism or rejection. You don't want people to say, "Oh, your work is horrible," so you're better off not writing it. Or maybe you're feeling reluctant to expose your thoughts to the world. Maybe you're thinking your ideas are too weird or too strange, and your friends will think low or they'll think different of you if they see that these are the kind of thoughts that are going through your mind. And that might be an obstacle for writing your book you really desire to write. Well, those are obstacles, but I'm telling you that it's very possible to overcome these obstacles and actually start writing your book. Now, maybe you've even given up completely, after you've struggled for years and years, and you think, is it ever going to happen? Should I just put this desire aside? So maybe you started and you've got several unfinished manuscripts in your computer on your laptop, but they're just there gathering dust because you don't know what to do with them and you've stopped worrying about the stories that you've been trying to write. But deep down, you know that writing your book is still an unfulfilled desire and it hasn't gone away. It's there. calls at you, you dream about it, you think about it, and sometimes maybe you hear somebody else has written a book and you think I I should write my own book too. So that desire is still there. It hasn't gone away, even though you try to bury it. Now, what happens if you don't write your book? You don't want to go through the rest of your life feeling jealous or feeling like there's an unfulfilled dream that you haven't achieved. You don't want to go through life feeling like a failure, like you've not achieved something that is vitally important to you. Yeah. And you don't want to continue feeling jealous of other writers who overcome their fear and write their novel. Like I said, sometimes you might think you buried that desire, but suddenly when somebody else writes a novel, you think, I'm actually more talented than that person. I think I can do a better job, but he or she has managed to write their novel and they're getting accolades and recognition and awards for it. But I'm still here. I haven't written my own work. Um, you don't want to go through life feeling like that all the time, and you don't want to miss out on all the huge benefits of writing a novel. There's this huge feeling of accomplishment when you've written a novel that I don't think you can get anywhere else. There's respect and admiration from your family and friends. Everywhere I go and I introduce myself as a writer, people say, "Oh wow, that's interesting." And it becomes this great talking point. And people ask me what I do. People ask me how I get ideas. What do you write about? Tell me more about your stories. It's always great when you go out and you meet people and you tell them what you do and you get their respect and you get their admiration. You don't want to miss out on getting feedback from your readers. So people who absolutely love what you've written and they find it inspiring, they find it motivating. There's nothing quite like getting that kind of feedback from people who connect with your work. And there's so many other benefits to writing, like recognition, awards, speaking opportunities, and many other doors that your writing will open for you that you can't even predict. For me personally, as an example, I started writing flash fiction just as an experiment, just to see really write short stories that were less than 500 words and it would make sense. And surprisingly, lots of people connected with those short stories. And, somebody read some of them and he decided to make a short film out of them. Now, that wasn't something I planned. It was quite a surprise to me. Shows you that the possibilities are endless when you start committing your words to paper and your stories to paper, and people can read them and connect with them. You never know where your work will go to, who would read it, and what could happen. So if you are tired of procrastinating with your writing dreams and your writing goals, what's the solution? What do you need to do next? Well, the first thing you need are clear structures so that you're not feeling completely overwhelmed with the idea of writing a novel. Then you need the right guidance that will steer you on the correct path and away from confusion so that when you when you think, okay, I'm going to start writing a novel, you don't feel overwhelmed and you don't feel confused. You don't procrastinate because you think it is such a huge task and is it worth starting at all? And then you need the right knowledge. You need to know what to do and it needs to be easy. So you need it broken down into easy practical steps so that you can start taking action on the on it straight away. Well, I'm here to help you. So in this webinar, I'm going to share 5 steps to help you go from feeling confused to feeling confident about writing a novel. I'll break down the novel, write manageable steps so that you don't have confusion. And I hope you would actually enjoy the brainstorming and writing process so that it becomes an easy thing for you to do and you do it easily. You don't have to worry too much about it and it's not so scary or overwhelming anymore. we'll go through now and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So you can ask me anything about the steps we've discussed. So make sure you stay to the end. It's going to be really great. The content is very valuable and very useful. So I'm just going to ask you to please turn off the TV, turn off Facebook, switch your phone to silent, and make sure the kids are far away from you. Remove all other distractions so that you can focus on the webinar. Now, I hope you're ready to learn and implement these steps in your life. If you are, so please note, let's begin with the content for this webinar. Okay, so what's the first step? The 5 steps to start writing your novel. The first step in writing a book is to actually start with the idea. So what's your book going to be about? Now, this may sound pretty obvious, but sometimes I meet writers who say they want to write a book, they want to write a novel, want to tell a story. But when I ask them, so what's your story going to be about? The idea, you just have the desire, but they don't have an idea. Now, that's totally fine. So I always advise them, well, the first thing I'll tell any aspiring author is to make sure they choose an idea that they're passionate about. So if you are going to be writing a novel and it's time, you're going to be thinking about it, working on it, dreaming of it, and talking about it for a while, definitely, weeks and months. Now, you must choose a topic that really interests you enough for you to carry on the momentum for that time. It's very easy to start something with enthusiasm, but if you're not really passionate about the idea you're going to be working on, then the enthusiasm will probably not sustain you right to the end, and you will probably give up halfway. Now, you don't want that to happen, especially if writing a novel is one of the main things that you want to do in your writing career. You don't want to keep starting and stopping and giving up. You want to make sure you can start and finish your project, because you can only publish something you've started and you finished. So so how can you come up with an idea that you can really get excited about? You may already have an idea that interests you if you've been thinking about writing your novel for a while, or you may need to think about it and brainstorm before you pick one good idea. So how to get good ideas? Well, you need to let your mind wander. You need to keep your imagination fired up. So I would suggest spend time reading books that really interest you. Spend time listening to conversations or podcasts on topics that are interesting to you, topics that are a bit um, motivating or encouraging or inspiring. You can get ideas from listening to the news on current topics that interest you. You can get ideas from reading history books. You can get ideas from reading biographies of people that you admire, or maybe even people you don't even admire. You can start getting ideas from many different sources. So from books, from podcasts, from music, from conversations you have with people, and it, you can, the opportunities and the possibilities. Spend time thinking about each of the topics that come to you or linger in your mind for a while. Once you start getting lots of possible ideas, you should take a notebook or open a document on your computer and start jotting them down. When you find a really great idea, it will be something that makes your brain light up more than some of your previous ideas that you've had in the past. And you should definitely write that down and put it aside as a possible idea that you might take on and start writing a novel with. Now, sometimes you may have more than one good idea and you are trying to decide which one to start with. I would say you should always choose the idea you're more interested in. So the idea that intrigues you a bit more, go with that one over the other. Now, sometimes you may have some ideas and you think, I need to choose which one is good for a short story, which one is good for a novel, which one might work better as flash fiction. That happens to me sometimes because I might have an idea and I think I want to write flash fiction with it. But when I start working on it, I'm thinking, oh, this could go on for a bit, so maybe I'll make it a short story instead. Or maybe you get an idea and you think it would be a short story, but as you start working on the characters, or I start thinking about it, you think it actually might work better as a novel. So you put that aside and extend the idea that was initially a short story into a novel. Now, when you have some ideas like that, it's always best if you go through each idea and imagine building a story around it. So, would the story appeal to you? Would it appeal to someone else? Can you see yourself writing it for a long time? Can you create characters around it? Can you form a viable plot around it? Would it make sense if you start creating a world around this story? So maybe you think about the character, maybe you think about the location, maybe you think about the plot, the time, and so on. And if you think this is something that you can see yourself working on, then that's great. You probably have a good idea for a novel. If you don't, I would say go back to the drawing board or go to your idea bank where you store ideas and think about maybe combining two ideas together, or maybe you need to brainstorm a bit more until you find a better idea. Like I said, I always advise writers to start with as much enthusiasm as possible because it's your enthusiasm that you start with that will finish them and up until you've written the last word and you type the end. That is your enthusiasm and your passion and your interest in that idea that will keep you going. That's why I always tell authors as well not to start writing because it's a trendy topic. No, don't start writing a novel because you think this is the hot topic right now and this is what is everybody's talking about out there. No, if you don't have the passion for your story, you won't finish it. Also, don't start writing because you think this idea is what will make you money. No, that's that's not a good idea to start writing a novel because you think this topic will make you money. No, it has to be something you're going to keep working on. You're going to keep building on for a long time, and you shouldn't go into it just because you think it will make you money. Now, start with something that is intricately like linked to you and makes your brain light up and makes you excited. Okay, so that was step one of the 5 steps. The next step is step 2. So that will be choosing your protagonist. The protagonist is one of the characters, one of the main characters in your story. So when you're choosing your protagonist, you're going to be thinking about the characters that will execute your story idea. Now, your first focus should be on the main character. The person that the novel is about, the person whose life or journey is the main focus of your story. Now, in whilst you've been thinking about the story idea, you may already have a protagonist in mind. But if you haven't decided yet, that's not a problem. You know, your story idea may have 2 or more people who are very important, who are very key to the story. So you may need to do some thinking and some more brainstorming before you pinpoint a main character. So I'm going to give you an example. You can write a story about a high-profile robbery at a bank. So maybe you heard the story in the news that recently there was this high-profile robbery, and a gang of robbers went to a bank, a high street bank, and went to rob in broad daylight. Now they got some inside information from an insider at the bank, and whilst they were there, something went wrong, unfortunately, and they had to shoot, and there was an innocent customer there who got shot, and he was killed. So shortly after they killed the innocent customer, they made off with millions of pounds and just got into a getaway car and disappeared. Obviously, so the police were called and some detectives were called to investigate. Whilst they were investigating, they have found out that the bank manager was guilty. So, well, maybe not guilty, but maybe he was suspected of some form of negligence on his part, and he has been suspended. Now, who would you think is the protagonist? If you found that story interesting enough to think that you're going to write a novel about it, who would be your protagonist? Now, who's here? The protagonist could be the ringleader among the gang of robbers. It could be the insider at the bank that gave the robbers the information that they needed. The protagonist could be the suspended bank manager. It could be one of the policemen or one of the detectives investigating the crime and who is following the trail of the robbers. Or it could even be the wife of the innocent customer who was killed during the robbery. So it could be any of these people, or it could be, as a writer, you have the choice to pick the one that is most interesting to you. Personally, I think I would choose either the ringleader among the gang of robbers, or I would choose the suspended bank manager. Now, the ringleader among the gang of robbers, I would have to go through his story and how he became a robber. For the suspended bank manager, for me, I think I'll find the story interesting because I want to contrast, his normal working day with the day that the robbers came in and ruined everything. I would also want to find out how being suspended and being suspected of being an accomplice is going to affect him personally, affect his self-esteem, affect his marriage, probably his home, his relationship with his wife, and things like that. So personally, I would want to explore having the bank manager as my protagonist. If so for somebody else, they might want to choose a different protagonist. Now, if you're not sure who to choose for your protagonist, you should do a quick sketch. So, like I gave in the example, you can do a quick sketch of maybe 5 possible protagonists and go with the one that you find their story most intriguing. Based on my example, the protagonist you choose for your story would drastically alter the direction of the story. So the story that you tell from the point of view of the ringleader of the gang of robbers will be very the story you tell if you're writing from the point of view of maybe the wife of the innocent customer who was killed. So the direction your story will go will be very different. You could also choose more than one protagonist. You could choose two, you could choose more if you want to make your story even more interesting. It's totally up to you. And with two protagonists might make it more interesting because you have two different stories for you to tell, and your reader might enjoy having two different points of view to look at the events that are going on. Now, when you have chosen your protagonist, you go through the process again and then choose an antagonist. So, an antagonist is a person who is like an opposition to the protagonist. So, the person who acts as a stumbling block or discourage is acting against his protagonist doesn't achieve their goals. Sometimes you might have one or two people that you think is the antagonist, but you may also need to go through this process again to choose who is the best protagonist for your story and the best antagonist for your story. As always you think you find their story most intriguing, or and you have to in the case of the antagonist, you have to give the person a very clear motive for doing so, saying that the story is most intriguing and they have the best or the clearest motive for going against your protagonist. So that is step 2. So creating your main characters. Step three is choosing your novel's point of view. So, point of view refers to how you tell the story of your characters. Now, that's who is going to narrate the story, and who does the reader get to feel the closest bond with? Who is your reader? With how is your reader going to experience the story? Is it through the eyes of your character, or would you step out of the novel and give your now? There are many different types of points of view, but the most common ones are first person, second person, third person limited narrative, and omniscient narrative. The first person point of view refers to your narrator when he says I, we, me, my, mine, and us. The first person point of view is usually the voice of the main character or one of the main characters in the story. First person point of view uses I, so your reader gets to experience the story as if they are reading it for themselves, as if they are speaking it for themselves. So, for example, you say, I called him, but he wasn't answering his phone. I immediately decided to pay John a visit tomorrow. The advantage of first person point of view is that it feels closer to the reader. You're not just the actions of the character, but they also get to read the words and the thoughts and perhaps even the inner motives of the character. So they feel closer to the character and it helps. This point of view is one of my favorites. I think it's my favorite because I like getting into the head of my character as well. So I like writing in first person point of view. The second option is the second person, and that is when the writer is using you to describe all the actions and emotions going on in the story. So the narrator uses you, and the reader gets to read the story as if they're speaking to you, as if they're speaking to themselves. Now, this point of view is rarely used in long fiction, it's rarely used in novels. Um, well, it's more commonly used in short stories. For example, if we say the same sentence as we used before, the example would be, you call him, but he wasn't answering his phone. He decided to pay John a visit tomorrow. Now, the third person point of view uses he, she, it, they, or them as the narrator. This point of view is the most common one in fiction today, and most people writing a novel use the third person point of view. It offers a variety of possibilities for limiting omniscience, so that is information that the narrator and the reader are privy to in the telling of the story. In third person unlimited omniscience, so the author can show us all the thoughts of all the characters, and the story can shift from one character's point of view to the other. Stories written this way can benefit from contrasting viewpoints. So for many characters in the story can tell us what's going on in their mind. They can speak. The reader can know what's going on in the mind of different characters in the story, and the point of view can switch as well. So maybe in one section of the story, you're reading from a male's point of view. In another section of the story, then you're reading from the female's point of view, and you can get conflicting viewpoints, so that maybe you know what somebody else is thinking, but the other characters in the story don't. And then in third person limited omniscience, the author ends few characters, usually one per chapter or per scene. Now, each of these points of view can work well for any novel, so you can choose either first person, second person, third person unlimited omniscience, or third person limited omniscience as your narrative. It's up to you as the author which one you think is best for you, which one is best for your story, and which one you're most comfortable with. Now, sometimes you might start writing the story, you may need to switch points of view. This sometimes happens like during the editing process, and you think, you've written the story, but you think it would work better if you get a different point of view. So sometimes you might have to change point of view, but that's fine. It's totally normal for that to happen. It just depends on how you've written the story and what you think is best for your characters and the telling of your story. So the part, choosing your novel's setting. Now, setting is concerned with time and place. So where and when the story happens. Now, choosing your idea and working on it and beginning to think about it, you may have already decided on the setting, so where the story is going to happen and when the story is going to happen. Say, for example, you chose to set your story in New York City in 1987, or maybe you chose to set your story in London during the Second World War. You can see immediately that a story set in New York in 1987 will be very different from a story set in London during the Second World War, even if the characters um, and the plot line is similar. Because of the setting and the timing, the stories will turn out differently. Now, perhaps it was the setting that intrigued you enough in the first place that prompted your story idea. So, if you're writing about New York, then your story will be very different from someone who is writing about London. Okay, so when you're choosing a location or a setting for your story, you might want to choose a real place that exists already in the present, or maybe in the past, or you might decide to just create a place that is totally unreal and it's an imaginary place, or you could set your story somewhere in between, such as a fictitious small town within a real country. So some elements will be real and some elements will be fictional. So for example, if I was writing about um, a, maybe I was writing about Essex, for example, I could write about some aspects of Essex that are real, but I could make up a town that doesn't actually exist and just make up some of the geographical aspects of that town. Now, if you're writing in a genre such as fantasy or sci-fi, you can set your story in a different place that doesn't have to really exist, such as another planet or an alternate reality. For a genre such as historical fiction, your story's location might be real. Say maybe you chose to set your story in Egypt, but because of the historical aspect, you set it in ancient Egypt. Or maybe you set your story during the First World War, or a time period outside of recorded history, maybe sometime in the Stone Age, for example, which would be fun actually if you can pull that off. That would be awesome. So yeah, choosing your setting would drastically alter the direction your story goes. Now, if you're going to set your story in a real place, search is very important. You need to include specific details about the place and the time in your novel. So, for example, if I was writing a story about London in 2012, it would be very different from a story in London in 1820. The fact that the time has changed means that the story and the setting and some of the things I include in the novel too will change. So, for example, the kind of jobs people did, the transportation systems will be different, the food will be different, the clothing will be different. Sometimes the language may be different. Sometimes the even the kind of conversations people have will be different. The cultural expectations will be different, and things like that. Um, you will not expect to find maybe a fashion blogger, in London in 1820, for example. That would be totally out of place. But a fashion blogger in 2015 would be perfect. That job exists now. You may also not find like machines and different types of um, modern conveniences that we take for granted now, like mobile phones and iPads. You would include mobile phones and iPads in a contemporary novel, but you would not include it in a novel in maybe the 1970s, for example. So things like that, the details of everyday life, the details of the environment, maybe even the weather and things like that will be different if you're writing a historical novel and you need to make sure that you know the elements that will be around and that will make your story real. Now, when you're describing places, real places that exist, you should describe them well enough so that the story would seem as authentic as possible to someone who lives there now. So, if I was writing a story about London in 2015, and I would include things like maybe the food we have available in London now. Somebody who lives in London should be able to recognize them. Maybe the streets of London, the London underground system, the railway system, London weather, it has to be recognizable. So it shouldn't be snowing in August if you're writing a story about London. So things that would make your story believable and real. So if your novel takes place within a cult, make it and as consistent as possible. So make sure the characters' actions and their choices are understandable within it. So you don't expect your character to be doing something that is not consistent with the location, so that your plot makes sense. Okay, so now we have the basic elements of your novel. The final step in this 5-step process is to bring it all together, and that step is writing your plot outline. Now, there are different schools of thought on whether an outline is really necessary if you're writing a novel. Personally, I think an outline is necessary because it acts as a roadmap for your story so that you know and you have a clear series of events that have to happen so that your characters can achieve their goals and your story makes sense from beginning to end. Now, different methods work for different writers, but I recommend a that helps me look at the plot and it helps me to create a flow for how the story unfolds and how it comes to a resolution. Okay. The 6-step method for creating a plot outline is as follows. Number one is your story goal. Your story goal means your protagonist is trying to achieve throughout the novel. So your story goal determines what your character is going to be doing, how they're going to do it, what they're trying to achieve, and how if your story is going to end happily or not. Now, to illustrate this, I think it would be best if I give an example. So I'm going to imagine that I want to write a romance novel, and my novel is going to have a protagonist that is a 37-year-old female executive. So someone who works um, in a high-flying job, in a high-powered job in the city. She she's 37 and she's thinking that she's had a good time, she's had a good run with her career, but she's reached where she thinks she wants to settle down, meet a man, fall in love and get married and have a family and hopefully, live happily ever after because, this is a romance novel I'm going to be working on. Now, if I was an author and I wanted to write this novel, I would think, what's the story goal? What's my protagonist going to be this story, and how does she do that? Now, since my book will be a romance novel, I already know that I want my character to fall in love. So my story goal will be to make my 37-year-old protagonist meet someone and fall in love and live happily ever after. It's always important to define early as possible so that every other element works towards that. Um, every other thing you're doing, every other thing you're going to be writing about is either helping the protagonist to reach that goal or becoming an obstacle in her way to reaching that goal. So that's a story goal. So when you're working on your novel, always start thinking about what your story goal is. Okay, so the next step for creating your plot outline is the consequences. Now, consequences are the things that would happen if your protagonist fails to achieve her story goal. So, if I was to think about my example of a female executive that is looking for love in her late 30s, what would be the consequence? The consequence would be that she does not meet her story goal. So, she ends up not meeting the right man and not falling in love and not living happily ever after. So that would be one of her consequences. And I can even make it worse and say she ends up growing lonely and growing old, lonely and miserable. She has no one around her and she has no family of her own. So those are the things that I will think about as the consequences for not meeting her story goal. So the third one is requirements. Requirements are the things your protagonist go. Requirements are the things that you go step by step at each stage of the story. This is what your protagonist will be working on in her attempt to achieve the story goal. Now, for me, one of the examples would be that my character she has to do something or do some things to start meeting eligible men, since her goal is to meet someone, fall in love, and live happily ever after. What kind of things she starts? Maybe she joins an online dating agency or something. Maybe she starts telling her friends and her family around her that she's now looking for love and she wouldn't mind being set up on dates. Maybe she cuts back on her hours at work so that she has more time to socialize. And so maybe she goes for a makeover, buys new clothes and starts dressing differently so that she can attract somebody. But these are the things that my protagonist has to do if she's hoping to achieve her goal. Now, the next thing is forewarnings. So, forewarnings are events that show that the consequence, which we spoke about in step two, the consequences are getting nearer. Now, the consequence for my protagonist is that she does not achieve her story goal, so she ends up living a lonely, miserable life. So in the story, as I'm creating the plot, I'm going to include things that make it seem as if she's never going to find love. So maybe she goes on a series of horrible, horrible dates, and each time she gets back home, she's just thinking, what was that? Why did I bother? Maybe all the good men are taken. Maybe she's never going to find love. Maybe she's doomed to just remain a career woman and she's never going to have a family of her own. So those are the things that I'm going to include as forewarnings. You know, Perhaps she met somebody she thought she could trust, and it seemed like everything was going well, but at the end of it all, it just seemed like it was just a waste of her time. So the fifth step is costs. Now, costs are sacrifices that you make to attain the story goal. Costs are different from requirements in the sense that this time the costs have to include some aspect of risk that your protagonist is taking. So let's say a female executive who we're writing a story about, finally met someone and it looks like it's going to be a good match for her and she might finally be able to achieve the goal. So she has to make a big decision now. If if her the person she's dating now says, oh, he wants her to maybe come on a trip to Paris with him, and that clashes with maybe a work event or something. She has to think about it, that would is it worth missing her work event and probably missing out on some of the benefits of being there, networking with her colleagues. Is it worth doing that for the sake of this person that she's just met and she's just started dating? So the cost has to be something that is a big sacrifice. Or maybe she's she's now thinking, if she goes to the trip, if she goes on the Paris trip with the person, she might miss out on the maybe she has to take some time off work, and that will coincide with promotion week or something, and she might miss out on the promotion she's worked so hard to achieve for the past few years. The cost has to be something that involves a bit of risk, and also makes your character stop to think, what's the benefit, what's going to be the benefit if she takes this big risk? Is it going to work out? Is it something that she might regret, or is it something that might move her towards the achievement of her goal? So after we've done the costs, the final step is the climax and the resolution. The climax of your story is when your protagonist makes a decision or does something that determines decisively whether or not the story goal will be achieved. So if your character is on the verge of making a decision and you think this decision is the crucial moment, if the character makes the right decision, the story will end happily. But if the character makes the wrong decision, then the story will end unhappily. Now imagine that for our example, our executive makes the right decision and the story ends happily. So maybe she finally started dating someone and he proposed and she said yes, and everyone is happy and they live happily ever after. You know, that means she's maybe taking a chance on somebody she wouldn't have normally considered, but he turned out to be the right person for her. So by taking that chance, by taking that risk, she's done something that determines decisively that the story will end happily. If maybe you're writing a different genre, maybe not romance, maybe you decide that actually you don't want the story to end happily, so maybe your character gives up just before the story goal was achieved, or maybe your character discovered something and they decided actually the story goal they have been pursuing all along was not what they really wanted, so they changed their mind and the story ended unhappily. You can determine that I'm going with ending happily because I know most romance novels, most books in the romance genre end happily. So I'm gonna allow my story goal to be achieved, and my character makes the decision that her relationship takes off and the story ends happily. Okay, so those are the 6 steps for creating a plot outline. Once you've written out each of these steps, you have the story goal, you have the consequences, you have requirements, you have forewarnings, you have costs, and then you have a climax. You now have everything you need to put them together and write a proper plot outline. Now, when you've written, when you've gone through the 6 steps, you can write your synopsis as well. So you can write a synopsis for the entire novel. So if anybody asks you, what's your story about, these 6 steps will guide you so that you know what your story is about, what's going to happen from beginning to end. You have a very clear idea in your mind of where you're taking the character. Who's going to be the main character in your story. You basically have all the ingredients you need to write your novel. Now you can then break this synopsis into a chapter by chapter outline, or maybe even a scene by scene outline. Depends on how detailed you want to be before you start writing. But writing the outline or writing the synopsis overwhelm you. So if you start thinking maybe you shouldn't get too bogged down by the details, then you can just leave it as a bigger outline. You don't have to go too detailed. As long as you have an idea of, you have a very good plan of what what you're going to do with your idea, your characters, and your setting, then you're good to go. You can start with your plot outline, and you can have your story outline from beginning to end. So there you have it. Those are the 5 steps for you to start writing your novel. Let's have a quick recap. So the first step is idea. The next one is choosing your protagonist. The third one is choosing your novel's point of view. Fourth one is choosing your novel's setting. And the fifth one is writing your plot outline. Once you've gone through these 5 steps, like I said, you'll have laid the groundwork for your novel, and writing it should become pretty straightforward after that. So the next thing, once you've done these 5 steps, is for you to write your full first draft. Now you have all the elements you need to weave your story together and write the novel from beginning to end. Now writing the first draft is where most writers struggle and give up. But I'm telling you that writing your first draft doesn't have to be a struggle. Writing your first draft doesn't have to take years, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of time either. It doesn't have to be something that you struggle with for years and years, and it doesn't have to be something that makes you cry. It doesn't have to be something that brings you frustration endlessly. Now imagine you can cut down this block. Imagine that you get the huge sense of accomplishment you get when you finally type the ends, when you finish your manuscript. Now, imagine holding your very own published book in your hands in a few months' time. If you finish with creating your plot outline and you finish doing all the steps, and you've actually finished writing your first draft. Now, imagine seeing your name and your book come up on Amazon when you've written everything and you've had it edited and published. Now, it is possible for all that to happen for you in 2016, because what if I told you that you can write your first draft in just 12 weeks? That's just 90 days. So if you're ready to complete your first draft using the 5 steps that we've covered here and other aspects of writing a novel, there are other elements such as conflict, suspense, using dialogue, and so on, then I have the perfect program for you. So I'm going to introduce a program called 12 Weeks to Your First Draft. Now, this is a coaching program for aspiring authors. It is designed to give you all the information, the accountability, and the support you need so that you can finish writing the first draft of your novel in just 12 weeks. Now, in this program, we will be covering more topics on writing a novel, and I will be sharing tips and strategies to help you write an interesting novel in a short time, so that writing your novel doesn't have to take years and it doesn't have to cause you frustration and heartache. This 12-week coaching program is for you if, one, you are serious about writing your next book fast, you are tired of feeling overwhelmed with the writing process, you are tired of procrastinating with your writing goals, you're keen to share your unique writing talent to the world, you are ready to receive the help and advice you need to achieve your book, you are ready to take the first step to becoming a successful author, and you are no longer in the excuses zone. So you're no longer making excuses. This is going to happen. You're going to write your novel, and it is not going to take forever. Now, the key aspects of this program is support and accountability. If you're trying to write a novel on your own, there'll be days when you get discouraged, there'll be days when you get overwhelmed, there'll be days when you're tempted to quit. That's just normal, that's just natural. Sometimes you may get distracted and start making excuses, and you might be tempted to slack off. And chances are, the longer you slack off, the harder it is to pick up from where you left off. But on this 12 weeks, your first draft coaching program, We won't let that happen to you. No. Every week you get lessons and you get tips to move you forward. So you get feedback on the progress you've made so far, and you get encouraging ideas to help you move past any doubts you might be having. You get writing prompts and you get weekly exercises to keep your words flowing so that you're not stuck, and that will help you break through writer's block. You get advice to help you discover your own writing voice and potential. You get support from me, and you get helpful weekly targets that would help you stay on track. And by the end of the course, you realize that not only were you able to do it, but you actually enjoy the writing process. So you actually enjoyed writing your book. The program includes an introduction and welcome session, 12 live weekly coaching sessions with me. You get worksheets and guidance notes, and then you get weekly coursework and assignments. You get support and you get accountability from me and from the group. You get email support for the duration of the course, and that's unlimited. So you can always send me an email and I'll get back to you. You get weekly group reviews and feedback, and you get some bonuses as well. You get a private Facebook group for all members, and at the end of it all, you get a professional marketing consultation. So if you wanted to market your novel, then you know what to do. And that's not all. When you register, you receive a free copy of my ebook, 10 Tips to Beat Procrastination for Writers. So this ebook will give you real helpful advice on how to overcome procrastination, which from my research and from my discussion with many aspiring writers, procrastination is one big problem that we all face. So this ebook gives you the perfect tips to overcome that pesky problem. For your second bonus, you also get a free audio mini series course, like my free mini series, 5 days to kickstart your novel. So that will get you started with practical tips and activities that you can start doing before you actually start writing, so that you can successfully complete the first draft. And finally, you receive a free copy of my other ebook, 15 Mistakes that Self-Publishing Writers Need to Avoid, which will give you advice for when you're considering self-publishing your work, if that's what you want to do. Okay, so the investment for this group coaching program is £897 for the entire 12 weeks, and for all the bonuses, and for the free ebook, and for the live coaching sessions. So we're offering an early bird discount. Writers who register and pay in full before the end of the month will get 20% off in price. And writers who register via this webinar will get 20% off the price. So that means you get the full program for £717 for the 12 weeks, including all the bonuses. Now, I know some people will not want to pay all the fees upfront, so I have installment options available. You can choose to make either 3 payments of £300 or 4 payments of £225. So whichever one is easier. The program is quite small, so I'm keeping the space small. There are only 12 places on this program, and I'm doing this deliberately because I want to provide excellent value for everybody on the group program, and I want to ensure that everyone meets their writing goals. So the group size is very small, so I can give everyone enough time and attention. I can give everyone feedback that can help everyone achieve their writing goals. And then each person each participant will also benefit from interacting together in a private Facebook group. So I'm keeping that group size small so that each person is heard, each person has their views heard. You don't feel like you're getting lost in the crowd, or your voice is being drowned out by too many people. So if you're ready to take action now and stop procrastinating and write your novel in 2016, then excellent. So please go to my website, www.accomplishpress.com/coaching, and follow the links, and you'll be able to get to the 12 weeks your first draft coaching program. Once again, it's www.accomplishpress.com/coaching. So if you would like to speak to me to discuss any questions you may have about this program, then please schedule a free appointment with me on my calendar. Also go to www.accomplishpress.com/coaching, and you see the links to take you to my calendar. So I would really love to, you want me to help you with writing your novel in 2016. Now the course starts in mid-January, and there are only 12 spots, like I said. If 20 you want to get your novel written and published, then I would urge you to take this first step to make it happen. There is no substitute to getting live help from a living, breathing expert to help you accomplish your dreams. Everyone knows that maybe you can read a book, or you can research online, or do one thing or the other, but there's no substitute to getting someone to help you every week achieve your goals. That accountability, that support is priceless. So once again, go to www.accomplishpress.com/coaching to register and secure your spot in the program now. Now we have a Q&A session. So does anyone have any questions regarding the content covered in this webinar? So if you have any questions about the 5 steps to writing your novel, or if you have any questions about the 12-week group coaching program, then feel free to type your question in the box and let me know. So have a few minutes to go through the Q&A session. Okay, someone is asking a question. They're saying, would they have access to the program even after it has ended? Yeah, I think I understand your question. Like, you have access to the worksheets, you have access to the content of the program afterwards, because once you've gone through the program, then you have the worksheets to take with you. You have all the materials to take with you, and you get access to it even after the program has ended. I hope that answers your question. Okay, I think we have one more question. Yeah. Ask to pay in smaller installments. Yes, yeah, we can. Yeah, you can pay in smaller installments. What we'll do is, you can, when the webinar is over, go to my website, book a consultation session with me, and we can discuss that over the phone or over Skype. Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, then I think this would be a good place to wrap up. So, like I said, imagine holding your very own published book in your hands in a few months' time. Imagine seeing your name and your book come up on Amazon. It is possible for you, you know, even if you feel you don't have loads of time, even if you feel you don't think you can write as well as your favorite author, even if you are worried that maybe you've held yourself back in the past, all that is the past. Just leave the past where it is and step into a better for you and with your writing goals. So I would urge you, so go and secure your spot in the program now and make your writing dreams come true in 2016. So thank you very, very much for attending this webinar. I'm sure you found it insightful and helpful for your novel writing. I look forward to helping you in the coming weeks. So go to www.accomplishpress.com/coaching to register and secure your spot in the program now and make your writing dreams come true in 2016. So I look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions that haven't been addressed during this webinar, maybe the content of this webinar, feel free to reach out to me. So you can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Google Plus, on LinkedIn. You can find me many of these social media. Of course, you can always go to accomplishpress.com/coaching to book an appointment to schedule a call with me. So thank you once again. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. I am sure you found it insightful, and I look forward to seeing you on the group coaching program in January. Thank you very much. Good night.